the letter on file?
He does.
I've seen
It's
it.
actually right here.
He's got the letter as filed.
It's filed. It's not filed yet. It will.
February 22nd, regular meeting of the Amherst City Council will come to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Van Turen.
Here.
Mrs. Wasilk. Mr. Winarski.
Here.
Mr. Miller.
Present.
Mr. Janik.
Here.
Mr. Bukovac.
Here.
Mr. Goodell.
Here.
Mr. Goodell.
I'd like to make a motion to excuse Mr. Ramsey as he has a letter on file.
Thank you. Ms. Vasil? Motion is second on the floor to excuse Mr. Ramsey from tonight's meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? He is excused. We'll stand for the prayer by Chaplain Wasilk and remain standing for the pledge of the flag by Sergeant R. Bukovac.
Will you bow with me, please? Gracious God, bless this meeting tonight. Keep us all within your care and protection. We pray a special blessing upon all those who are campaigning during this season. We pray that you keep them all safe and away from harm. We also pray that you keep our public safety forces safe, those that protect the public health and welfare in so many ways. Bless us all. And now may the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Move on to item 4, the consent agenda.
Minutes of the regular council meeting held February 8th, 2016. Minutes of the Finance Committee meeting held February 15th, 2016. Minutes of the Utilities Committee meeting held February 15th, 2016. And minutes of the Streets Committee meeting held February 15th, 2016.
Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to accept consent agenda as read.
Mr. Goodell.
Second.
Motion is second on the floor to accept the consent agenda as read. Are there any comments? Roll call vote.
Mr. Van Turen.
Yes.
Mrs. Wasilk.
Yes.
Mr. Winarski.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Janik.
Yes.
Mr. Bukovac.
Yes.
Mr. Goodell.
Yes.
Completes item 4. Moving on to item 5, acknowledgement of the public with anything on tonight's agenda. Anyone wishing to speak on anything that is on tonight's agenda? If not, move on to item 6, ordinances and resolutions. First reading. Item A.
An ordinance authorizing and directing the Safety Service Director to solicit bids for the 2016 Street Rehabilitation Program and authorizing and directing the Safety Service Director to award the contract for such work to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, and authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract for professional services with Bromhall Engineering and Surveying Company relating to such program.
Ms. Wasil.
Move to send this to the second reading.
Mr. Goodell.
Second.
Motion is second on the floor to send item A on to the second reading. Any comments? Mr. Winarski.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Looking at the street program for this upcoming year, I had the opportunity, or it gave me the opportunity to speak to ODOT. Just kind of get a feel for what the direction is, and there's some questions about concrete versus asphalt and overlaying and stuff like that. But one thing I did learn while talking to ODOT, this is the year everyone's going to be doing asphalt work, and not just a little bit of it. We're talking cities that normally do 5 are going to be doing 8 programs. And why I mention this is we may want to consider next meeting passing it on the second reading. And that's so we can get our bids in early. Companies are going to be overwhelmed, mark my words, with this work that's going to be coming in for asphalt, because the prices, we'll never see these prices again. So I just wanted to throw that out there for consideration for the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I agree with you 100%, Mr. Winarski. And the earlier we get on this, the better off we're going to be. Mr. Van Turen.
Is it possible to offer up an amended motion in order to pass this on the first reading, or is that something that you, Mr. President, recommend we wait on?
Well, it'd be up to the mayor. Mayor?
I think it needs to follow the budget. I don't think there's enough money in the budget till it passes. So if you pass this on emergency, same time the budget possibly passes on its third reading,
Okay.
it would be sufficient. The engineers are doing some preliminary work. They actually want to speed this along also. They've also told me this is the year to get asphalt at some really good prices. Even though we've asked for 1.1 whatever million dollars, I really expect these prices to come in lower than that.
All right, great, and kudos to the mayor and to Mr. Winiarski for the research and the recommendation on this. I wouldn't have known otherwise personally.
Thank you. Mr. Miller?
So you wanted 3 readings on emergency, or you want to suspend council rules and then not pass an emergency? Because I'm not.
Okay, the budget should pass next on the third reading. So if you would pass this item on its second reading, it would pass the same time as the budget.
And with the
does.
30 days, no emergency on the end.
If you want to get the best bids, pass it with emergency. If you want me to wait 30 days and take a chance that everybody's bidding a lot of work, that's really council's. I can work either way. I think you'll save the taxpayers some dollars if you pass it on emergency.
Yes,
So,
Mr. Miller?
If that answers your
If that,
question.
yes, it does. So in that case, would we be looking for amending that motion to pass, to suspend council rules, or do you want to wait on the second reading,
No,
suspend,
we-
and then
we
with
don't.
emergency?
Just pass it on the next, second reading.
So we're going to suspend next
Yes,
meeting and with emergency.
we can do
Okay.
that.
Okay, that's just taking it from first reading, no suspension, no emergency, to second reading, suspension and emergency. And I just want to make sure we're clear on that's how you want to. Okay.
Mr. Jang?
Mr. Mayor, is there the option for a street to opt out of this and
My-
not get paved, decide not to get paved?
My real opinion, if you're talking about Meadowbrook, I assume, Meadowview,
Quail.
Quail Hollow. We've looked at this a lot. It's not a decision I took lightly. The decision probably would have been a whole lot easier to just do nothing this year. The real big discussion, rehab or replacement, and the initial investment was part of the decision making. The asphalt is less than half the cost of a concrete complete replacement. We did a future cost analysis. We went out about 40 years, and it really is about the same amount of cost to build an asphalt, to rehab with asphalt, rehab it through the years, or to redo it in concrete. 40 years is the kind of the industry standard to look out to see when costs kind of even out, and really it is about the same amount of cost after 40 years. Performance, asphalt performs very well. It's a good smooth road. It's safe. It absorbs light. It helps melt the snow in the wintertime. There's really some good points. The other thing we looked at is ease of rehab. Asphalt overlay, there's only a couple days, 3 or 4 days worth of actual construction. When you redo a road in concrete, you're looking at well over a month, maybe a month and a half's worth of disturbing that neighborhood to redo that road in concrete. It really came down to immediate need and availability of funds. That road needs replaced now, and the
Well-
amount of funds that we have. And if you're talking about Quail,
It was
we
redone last
did
summer.
some,
We did it in
we planned for the future of that. The real problem with Quail, or Quail the cul-de-sac, the base was terrible. Whether we would have waited another year and done that work now, it still would have had to have been done. There was no base left in that section. So the engineers looked at that a lot and thought, what if we're gonna be wasting our money? And they decided it was really work that was planned in advance, so that when we overlay it in asphalt, that base work was already performed. So that, the decision of the engineers, the decision of myself to make sure that road is all done. Cost analysis for the next time we need a rehab, it would be very cost ineffective to come in and just do that portion of Quail Court, or whatever the proper name is. So 12 or 14 years down the road when we redo that, they move all their equipment once, they move into a neighborhood, they do all that road all at once. It's real important for the future care of that road to do these things now.
And just to be clear, your plan from this point forward for every subdivision is to cover an asphalt.
Like I said, you look at these and it's it comes down to what decision is best for that particular situation at that particular time. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, asphalt and concrete might be a lot closer to the same price. The base, again, might be very bad on a particular road. Those things are looked at by more than just the mayor to what the most logical decision is for that particular road. And right now, this particular circumstance calls for the immediate need to resurface that road with the funds we have available on that asphalt overlay. So no, I won't commit to they're all gonna be done. It's a decision that's the best made at the time of the need.
Thank you.
Mr. Winarski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Janik, I'll just be right up front with you. When I was talking to ODOT, I asked them for any studies, any information they had, and I will happily forward it to you. It's actually kind of an interesting read. They went back and looked at sections of highway, it's Medina, and there's in Ohio. And they looked at the cost associated with asphalt versus concrete. How much did they spend on a concrete road? And there was, I believe, 231 miles of each that were analyzed. The concrete roads came out to per square yard over the 34 years at $17.64. The asphalt came in at $7.97 over 34 years. That was their total cost investment per square yard. I imagine 34 years is a pretty good window. So unless it's aesthetics, I think the numbers really side with asphalt. And I'm not trying to give you the impression I have an opinion aesthetically one way or the other, but the information I stumbled across just really screams asphalt. That's all.
Thank you. Mr., you want to answer him?
Well, I was just gonna say, looking at all the different subdivisions in Amherst, I'm fine if that's the direction we go, but then we're gonna do cost analysis on every single subdivision when it needs redone, or potentially redone, because there's other subdivisions that have asphalt in between the concrete right now, Westchester being one of them. I saw that yesterday, driving through there. And if that's what we're gonna do, then we're gonna cost analysis every single subdivision when it needs redone. And if the asphalt's cheaper, then I would assume that's the direction you're going in terms of.
Cheaper is not the word, more cost effective.
More
I would
cost
guess.
effective, okay, thank you.
Mr. Van Kuren.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I guess my concern is, are we being consistent here with practices from the past? In other words, are there examples of other streets in Amherst that were concrete?
There's examples of both. There's a lot more examples of asphalt over concrete than every place that's ever been built in Amherst. Mostly have been subdivisions. Some of them go back 80 years, some go back 50 years, some go back 30 years. Just in recent history, I've got about 20 roads here that I went and looked at. They're not all new subdivisions. When you build a subdivision, a new road, the difference between asphalt and concrete isn't as big as a rehab. You've got all that sub-base work. There's really only about an 18 to a 25% difference in building a brand new road in concrete as asphalt. So the cost analysis and the length of time it's going to last makes more sense at that time to build concrete. Our tax program, the income tax that the people agree on, is a street resurfacing program. It's not a reconstruction program. So we use the cost analysis to see which way is the best way to rehab these roads. And I do a cost analysis on every single one of these roads, I promise, that we do. And this, right now, at this point in time, my everything I can find and research says asphalt this year.
But this isn't the first example.
Oh, no, it isn't the first
That's
example.
what I'm asking, are we being consistent?
We are
here?
being consistent.
In the past, we have overlaid concrete with asphalt?
Yes.
Okay.
Not in any subdivision, though.
I don't get the question. I mean, they're all,
Well, there's city streets and there's subdivisions.
just about every group of houses that was ever built within the city was a subdivision. I mean, Lincoln Street was a subdivision at one time. Sharondale and Shady Lawn and all those was a subdivision at one time. Gordon Street and Jackson Street and all those houses when they were built was a subdivision. Those are all streets that used to be concrete that are now overlaid with asphalt.
Those all used to be concrete?
Just about all of them, correct. And Gordon Street and Orchard Drive is some of the roads that we have that are probably traveled with the most heavy equipment, and we overlaid those last year before last with asphalt.
I didn't realize those particular streets had been concrete at one time and been overlaid.
Absolutely.
That's all the questions I have.
Thank you. Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. President. We, as new subdivisions, I think we have some room for a couple left. Come in, we're having the builder put down a concrete base road at first so that we have that base, correct? So that down, after years down. So I think all of them are gonna start concrete, and then it's how do we resurface them? And And right now with petroleum prices where they're at, I can completely see the cost effectiveness. So as much as we'd all love to have beautiful concrete roads, I think the best bang for our buck right now is running with an asphalt overlay, even though it's aesthetically not always as pretty as a nice clean concrete. But look at Elyria Avenue, that's been a fiasco. It's been a mess of trying to repair concrete and getting it right. And I don't know, that's almost enough evidence right there that it's time to fix our base and put an overlay, especially on Elyria Avenue. That was just my confirming that that's how we're having new builders put in.
Thank you.
So, thanks. That is all, Mr. President. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else? Did you want to say something?
Yes, I do.
Would you go to the podium, state your name, please?
My name is Justin Sardinier. I live at 1200 Meadowbrook Court. Speaking to the Meadowbrook Drive resurfacing, what's going to be done about the base on Meadowbrook? There's all the concrete pads are all buckling. The base isn't solid underneath of those. We have drainage issues that's causing all of this to happen. What is your plan on fixing that stuff before we go and put all this
That's
concrete
one
down?
reason, you know,
For this asphalt down.
for an asphalt program, this is somewhat expensive, but a lot of that entails some core drilling. We're gonna check those bases. Wherever the concrete is higher, we'll grind it off. Wherever it's lowered and sunk, we'll figure out why it's sinking. I mean, we will investigate.
There's some areas that are.
Well, then we'll do a full depth repair, and, you know, there is money in that budget for full depth repairs. So the engineers will pick the spots that look the worst. We'll do a core, we'll measure the compaction, and then decide what to dig up and what to replace with a good base before we overlay it. And the drainage, some of the drainage problems, where there's some houses with sump pumps, I understand.
Yeah.
So there's some call in that, and that the reasoning some of that's more expensive again than a typical rehab with asphalt overlay. There's some storm water monies in there for extra catch basin or two, and some extra ways to get the storm water out of there more quickly. So that is all being looked at.
Okay, yeah, because right now there's, well, not currently, but as soon as it freezes again, there'll probably be about 6 inches of ice on the road. And
See, asphalt will melt that quicker.
well, it's not gonna melt at all. We're gonna expect the kids to walk down the street, and the water is actually is seeping underneath the road right now. If you go and take a look at it.
That would all be looked at. The engineers do a fine job. And Bramhall is one of the best stormwater engineers around. So that's all part of the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Justin, can you say your last name again?
Sardinier,
Can you spell it?
Sardiner.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is August Tornabene. I live on Quail Court. I bought my land before Quail Court was even installed, okay? One of the main reasons that I bought the lot on Quail Court was because of the concrete streets, okay? I'm not an engineer, but I do know that once you start putting asphalt layment over concrete, you're gonna start getting spalling, and we're gonna have bumps and holes continuously. It's gonna be patched, and I don't want that. I've lived there for all these years, and I don't want it. I should have a say-so on what's gonna go in front of my house. If you have two houses identical, one has a concrete driveway and one has an asphalt driveway, which one has the better value? It's the concrete driveway. So why should we take second fiddle for asphalt where I live, or anybody else, over the concrete? They've completely done the Quail Court where I live now. The contractor wasn't very good, you guys hired from before. But it should go back to concrete again. Okay? My tax dollars, my property taxes went up, okay? I'm sure they're not gonna go down because of asphalt. So I'd like to see concrete go back again.
Thank you for your opinion.
Thank you. Anyone else? Now we have a motion and a second on the floor to send item A back to, or on to the second reading. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Van Kuren,
Yes.
Mrs. Wasilk,
Yes.
Mr. Winarski.
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Janik.
Yes.
Mr. Bukovac.
Yes.
Mr. Goodell.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item B,
An ordinance authorizing and directing the Safety Service Director to solicit bids for the Cooper Foster Park Road Improvement and Rehabilitation Project Phase 2, and authorizing and directing the Safety Service Director to award the contract for such work to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract for professional services with Bromhall Engineering and Surveying Company related to such improvements.
Ms. Vasil.
I move that we take this on to the second reading, and I also reserve the right to be the first to question.
Okay, do I have a second? Mr. Goodell?
Second.
Okay. Mayor?
Mr. Miller had a question last week. He was very good at catching the $40,000 difference in engineering. Well, I did look back, and it appeared the bids were written a little different. ODOT paid the first $40,000 to Bramhall directly. So that actually brought the price of engineering exactly the same, and the difference in construction estimation is only $500 difference.
Yeah, I
So
think we
that,
caught that.
that's where that 40, I
Yes.
appreciate you finding that, and I
Yes.
think we can be more comfortable to see that it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
No, and thank you for
comparable
the
to last year.
clarification after the meeting on that as well.
Thank you. Ms. Vasil.
Yes. Mr. Mayor, does this also fall under the same need for the second reading?
We're bringing this to you quite a bit early. The state don't move as quickly, so we actually have to wait for those funds to be available. This really could go the typical 3 readings.
Okay.
And on the 3rd reading, I'll know whether the state's ahead of schedule or not. I can ask for possibly
Thank you.
emergency at that point. Thank you for asking.
Motion and second on the floor to take item B onto the second reading. Any comments? Roll call. Mr. Miller.
Just make sure we understand, there is a declaring an emergency on this currently, so,
Is there?
yes, there is.
I didn't think there was.
On
No,
6B.
No.
No, I'm sorry, I put out a new agenda.
I think
It's,
that was a mistake.
Is
Yeah,
that,
it-
is that what was removed here?
Yes.
Because I'm going off of this one with the back
Thanks.
actual ordinance itself.
Good deal.
So the cover sheet is what needs to be replaced?
yes.
I will remove that. All right.
We need to amend that motion.
No. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Van Kuren,
Yes.
Mrs. Wasilk,
Yes.
Mr. Winarski.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Janik.
Yes.
Mr. Bukovac.
Yes.
Mr. Goodell.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item C,
An ordinance authorizing the Safety Service Director to enter into a contract to purchase an Altech standard duty DM45 digger truck for the electric department through the Ohio State Cooperative Purchasing Program.
Mr. Miller.
Move to take 6C onto the second reading.
Ms. Vasil.
Second.
Motion is second on the floor to take item C onto the second reading. Any comments? Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Winarski had asked about the 44-foot pole sheath height and whether that would be enough to lift all our poles. I met with the foreman at the police or at the electric garage, and we went through the specs. And you don't grab a pole at the top of the pole; you grab it way down here, and all the weight's at the bottom of the pole. So he said the specs showed that you could lift a 105-foot pole with this machine. So he doesn't expect us to ever go above that. But the most important spec, and you'll find this interesting, was that we had to be careful that this machine would go under our bridges. And so that was as big a machine as we could get and still go under our bridges. So thank you for asking that question earlier.
Any other comments? Mr. Bukovac?
You said, you mentioned the bridges. Is there certain parts of the city that we can't get to without going underneath the bridge? We can go around just about.
You can go around, but you would, if you have an emergency and you want to get there a lot quicker, it's silly to have a machine that's 2 inches too tall.
And we got a big town here. I
So
can see it's
the machine
15
is
minutes.
adequate, you know, the machine does do the job we need it to do and still get under our bridge.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Motion is second on the floor to take item C onto the second reading. Any comments? Or roll call vote, please. Sorry about that.
Mr. Van Kuren.
Yes.
Mrs. Wasilk.
Yes.
Mr. Winarski.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Janik.
Yes.
Mr. Bukovac.
Yes.
Mr. Goodell.
Yes.
Takes care of item C. Item D,
An ordinance authorizing the Safety Service Director to enter into a contract to purchase a new 2-in-1 half-ton dump truck for the street department through the Ohio State Cooperative Purchasing Program and authorizing the safety service director to enter into a contract to purchase certain additional equipment for the truck.
Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to take 6D on to the second reading.
Mr. Van Kuren.
Second that.
Motion second on the floor to take item D on to the second reading. Any comments? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Van Kuren.
Yes.
Mrs. Wasilk.
Yes.
Mr. Winarski.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Janik.
Yes.
Mr. Bukovac.
Yes.
Mr. Goodell.
Yes.
Item passes. Item E.
An ordinance authorizing the execution of remaining requirements energy supply schedule with American Municipal Power Incorporated, known as AMP, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Van Kuren.
Move to suspend council rules so that this item can be passed on the first reading.
Ms. Wasilk. Motion is second on the floor to suspend council rules on item E, so may be passed on the second reading. Any comments? Mr. Mayor.
Don't remember who asked the question, but it was about the speculating and how we would pick the best price. I did talk to our rate consultant, Mr. Courtney. He'll be watching these rates for us along with many other cities, and he will be meeting with me and telling me when we do have the best rates. He said they're at the best he's ever seen. Right now, it's actually real low for 4 cents per kilowatt. And he also said if for some reason this thing drops out, we don't have to lock in a rate. So even though we sign as a contract and we don't find that there's a good enough rate to lock into, we don't have to do it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Miller.
There's a need for suspension of council rules for this?
The sooner you do, the better chance that we will lock in a very good rate. So no need, but it might be a good thing.
So if we lock it right now and a better rate happens down the road,
We're out of luck.
we're out of luck. Just like the other way around.
If it goes up, you should have done it now.
Motion is second on the floor to suspend council rules on item E, so may be passed on the first reading. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Van Kuren.
Yes.
Mrs. Wasilk.
Yes.
Mr. Winarski.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Janik.
Yes.
Mr. Bukovac.
Yes.
Mr. Goodell.
Yes.
Motion carries.
It's
Ms.
or-
Ms. Vasil.
oh,
Move
sorry.
to adopt.
Mr. Miller.
Second, please.
Motion is second on the floor to adopt. Roll call vote.
Mr. Van Kuren.
Yes.
Mrs. Wasilk.
Yes.
Mr. Winarski.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Janik.
Yes.
Mr. Bukovac.
Yes.
Mr. Goodell.
Yes.
Motion carries.
It's ordinance 16-04.
Item F.
An ordinance authorizing and directing the safety service director to solicit bids to trim trees on a unit basis in the city that interfere with electrical distribution lines at a cost not to exceed $80,000, and awarding and directing the safety service director to award the contract for such work to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder.
Mr. Goodell.
I'd like to make a motion to take item 6F to the second reading.
Mr. Miller.
Second, please.
Motion is second on the floor to take item F onto the second reading. Any comments? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Van Kuren.
Yes.
Mrs. Wasilk.
Yes.
Mr. Winarski.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Janik.
Yes.
Mr. Bukovac.
Yes.
Mr. Goodell.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Who seconded that?
Mr. Miller. Completes item 6. Move on to item 7, ordinances and resolutions, second reading. Item A.
An ordinance to make appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Amherst, State of Ohio during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2016, repealing all ordinances in conflict herewith.
I'd like to speak before there's a motion made,
Yeah.
if I could. We have one item that we need to amend. There's in all other accounts in the 100s, it's 100-7010-52323, election expenses. What that is the cost that we incur when there's an election. From the prior year, we get a bill from the election board, and I don't think a lot of people realize this. The city gets billed for their portions of their elections. I budgeted what I thought was a fair amount. I knew we had a primary and I knew we had a general election. I budgeted more than we typically have in the past of $20,000. We got our bill a few days ago, and it's $21,000 and some odd dollars. There was a primary, which cost came in at $15,214.42. That was just for the primary election. The less amount of entities there are in an election, the more it costs each entity. It's shared evenly. And our general election costs were $5,943.78 for a total of $21,158.20. I would like you to change that one line item to $21,200, so that would cover that, and it will just balloon right down to it'll actually just inflate the total budget by $1,200. There's some monies that were unappropriated, so it will change that line, and I think if it's proper, then it'll just change the total amount for the budget. The auditor might want to speak if that's the proper way of doing this.
Yeah, we really don't even, I mean, we didn't make the change in our office, we just wanted to make you aware of it.
Yeah.
Actually, I need the budget changed. You're passing this budget, and there's an item in the budget, and I only budgeted $20,000. I would like that changed to $21,200.
Could you give us that line item again, please?
Absolutely. 100-7010-52323.
What page is that on?
4.
Page 7
I-2.
of 17. The one I have. Page 7 out of 17 pages. 100-7010. It's at the end of the one. It's the last account in the 100 accounts. All other 100 account expenses. So I really would like you to amend that so we have enough money to pay that bill.
And it's 21,000, huh?
21,200.
21,200 is what I'd like that budget item to say. And again, that'll just inflate the end of the budget. They'll make those changes in the auditor's office.
Mr. Silver.
And that was for what election?
Last year's total elections, so the primary election from last year and the general election from last year.
Well, there
523.
wasn't any expenses for the primary, there wasn't.
523.
I didn't think we had any contested elections last year for the primary.
Not my department, but we had a primary that people went to vote at, and Amherst gets charged for those expenses. Contested or not, we get charged. So, we got a bill, and I want to pay it. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
Mr. Jack.
Move to take 7A onto the third reading with the amendment that the mayor suggested.
Thank you.
Mr. Winarski.
I'll second that.
Okay. The motion is second on the floor. Any other comments? Mr. Miller, did you want to
Thank
make a
you.
comment?
Cost of democracy. Plain and simple. Whether we have a primary, how the primary got there, what's in the primary, what's in the general, who's in the general. I don't think that's as relevant as the fact that we in America have 2 opportunities to elect our officials. And I don't see the cost of democracy being that exorbitant of $21,000. So, yes, we'd rather pay 0, but democracy is not free. So anybody's going to complain about a price that it costs us to hold elections, I think is a moot
There was
point.
no one on the ballot.
There was actually 2 people on the ballot for council president.
Didn't one of them drop out?
Yes, and
So there was no one on the ballot. My point is, before you insult me, that we paid $15,000 for having no one on the ballot.
well, when the ballot was placed and it was filed, there was an expected primary. So
I concede that.
So what should we do as a city? Go find somebody because they decided that they were unable to be on the ballot? I mean, is that what you're looking for? So that
I'm
would-
not, I agree, it could happen to either party, but my point was that it's a little silly that we're paying $15,000 for a primary where there were no choices at all. That's my only point.
we don't, and the good point with that, and where I'll agree with you, Mr. Van Turen, is the fact that we do have the ability to probably not pay that, but that's a ORC issue that we have to follow, and so does the county, the Board of Elections. So I would have no problem with submitting that upwards, but for us to
Okay.
grind it here in council's really just a
enough.
political
Mr.
shot.
Mr.
So I'll
Cooper.
call it what it is.
Yeah, personally, I remember this person filed, and I guess he did drop out due to some personal issues. We, as a party, called to find out if there was still gonna be a primary, and unfortunately, by the time this person dropped out, the ballot was already set. So they couldn't pull it back in time. Also, in that primary, Firelands had a school levy, and part of Amherst residents live in Amherst, or in the Firelands School District, so we also had to man that over in C, or the first floor, for those residents that go to Firelands. But they could vote for that levy. So
And
that was part of the.
that accounted for how much of the $15,000?
I would have to check that.
That's the schools pay for that, we don't pay for that.
But we pay it goes to paying workers and whatnot as well.
I would stress that the lesson here is that in either party, someone has the ability to file, have a primary go onto the ballot, drop out, regardless of which party, and I'm not pointing fingers here, and cost the taxpayers $15,000. And I'd like the residents to consider how much street repair we could have done with that, how much good that could have done. And I think that most residents don't realize what happened. I don't think they have any idea. But last year, you had to pay $15,000 because someone decided to run for council president and then dropped out when it was too late to take their name off the ballot. So you're paying $15,000 in taxpayer dollars because of that. And we can call it democracy. I'd rather call it bad planning. But the fact remains that we paid 15 grand for nothing. And I want everybody to remember that. That's all.
Well, that's enough of this phase of council. So we have a motion and a second on the floor to take item F onto the third reading as amended. What?
I just have a question for you.
Sorry,
We have to
exactly.
pay this bill, correct? I mean, the statement was made that we don't have to pay the bill.
No, we have, no.
We have to
gotta
pay
do
this.
this.
There's no.
The services have been rendered, we have to pay
Oh,
this.
yeah, okay.
Well, Mr.
No,
Miller
no.
said that we could file some sort of thing with ORC. Is that correct or is that wrong?
No, yeah,
Mr.
Mr. Miller
Washington.
said that you would take it up with the state of Ohio, is what I said.
So we could take this up with the state
No,
of Ohio?
you could take it up with the state of Ohio and get the laws changed so this doesn't happen, but right now, we have to pay this bill, and that's what we're here to vote on, not to make a political statement in a big old scene. But if that's what you need to do, we'll sit here and listen to it. But democracy is free.
Come on,
Who has
come
made a
on,
political
guys.
statement
Hey,
here? I don't think
let's,
I've blamed either party for it.
let's settle down here. Mr. Pecora?
Yes, Mr. Dietrich, we need to pay this bill. Plain and simple. Let's move on. I mean, we can all use the floor of council for making political speeches, whether it's about elections or Halloween and sex offenders. Let's move on.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second on the floor again to amend item A and send it on to the third reading. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Van Kuren?
Yes.
Mrs. Vasilk?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Bukovac? Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Thank you. Item B.
An ordinance authorizing the City of Amherst, Ohio to enter into an agreement with Everstream Solutions LLC for pole attachments of fiber optic cable and associated hardware.
Mr. Goodell.
I'd like to make a motion to take item 7B to the third reading.
Thank you. Mr. Winarski.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second on the floor to take item B onto the second reading. Any comments, or third reading, I'm sorry. Any comments? Mr. Bukovac.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, if you can refresh my memory, there's no, on this one, they are going to hold off on doing their new installation of the fiber with the resulting of this ordinance, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
They
so
can't do any work in the city of Amherst until this
This is
ordinance
done.
is passed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Van Kuren?
Yes.
Mrs. Vasilk?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Bukovac?
Yes.
Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Motion carries. Completes item 7. Move on to item 8. Ordinances and resolutions, third reading. We have none. Or, I'm sorry, yes, we do. Item A. Haven't had one of those in a long time.
An ordinance amending Amherst codified ordinances, sections 1149.02, 1149.03, 1149.10, and 1149.11 of Chapter 1149 signs.
Mr. Goodell.
Move to adopt.
Mr. Miller.
Second, please.
Motion is second on the floor to adopt. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Van Kuren?
Yes.
Mrs. Basilk?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Bukovac?
Yes.
Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Motion carries.
016-05.
Move on to item 9, miscellaneous and acknowledge the public. Anyone here wishing to speak on any item? Mr. Winarski.
Thank you, Mr. President. The last item we just passed, is it too late to put an amendment that I'm allowed to remove these signs that are oversized that these judges have put up? I'm just kidding. I'd like to speak to, that really illustrates the urgency of where the next step we're taking. I'd like to thank Mr. Miller for addressing it, but you can't get this to me soon enough, please.
We're working on it. Working hard.
Then I have a second thing, and it's a heads up, maybe a bit of a homework assignment. In 2 weeks, I'm going to be coming to council formally requesting, let me make sure I get my language right here, requesting for a resolution declaring the necessity of some sidewalk repair. We already have existing legislation, and your homework assignment is to read Amherst Code 903.04. It was passed in 1965. And it's worth reading in advance of us formally discussing it because it covers a lot of stuff. And that's it. I just want to give you the heads up. That'll be 2 weeks from now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winarski. Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a quick note, and I'm sure everybody's been hearing it. We have rains, snow, sleet, who knows what coming, a big one coming Wednesday, Thursday. Depending on how cold that gets and how much snow and if it's rain, I would ask the administration to speak to the departments, preferably street and water, to have them go look between 163 and 165 Wood Hill, where the runoff is going to be taking place from the park. All depends on how much water. Now, I don't have videotape of it yet. I was trying to see if somebody actually taped it, but I have witnessed it for myself, and it is a current of water coming through, and I'm concerned about more erosion, sidewalk, and if we can get that taken care of before we look at Wood Hill. Maybe if they saw it in action, it'd be better than just my poor explanation of it, so I apologize. But a lot of water comes in between those two homes. It's right at the crest of Wood Hill, comes out of the park, and if there are anybody that gets water in their basement, I know this is probably Mr. Jeffries' year, so I'll leave it to you to explain what you would want done when we get all this mass water for a melt-off, which we don't have snow, which is impressive.
Are you forecasting?
Yeah, I'm throwing you a softball to hit out as to what our residents should do if water gets in their basement and how they should handle calling and that, backup or anything.
I would think you certainly contact the utility department, maybe some folks would contact the mayor's office. Either one of those avenues are, I believe, appropriate.
So that they know if we're getting for water control. So that's all I have, Mr. President. I appreciate it, and thank you for looking at those issues.
Mr. Bookback.
I just wanted to thank Mr. Winarski for being the one to mention the signs instead of me this year. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, move on to item 10, agenda requests and committee meeting schedules.
I have 3, Mr. President. They all are going to ordinance. The first one is O-16-13. It's a resolution concerning the appointment of members to the local board of tax review. The next is A-16-14. Amend section 121.04 standing rules of council regarding the change of start times. And the final one is A-15-15, amending sign ordinance 1149, sections 1149.06, 1149.07, 1149.08, and 1149.12, and that's complete.
Thank you. Finance, Ms. Vasil?
Nothing, Mr. President.
Thank you. Building and Lands, Mr. Janik.
Nothing, Mr. President, please cancel.
Thank you. Streets, Mr. Bukovac.
Have no items, please cancel.
Thank you. Community Development, Mr. Goodell.
Nothing at this time, Mr. President, please cancel.
Thank you. Executive, Mr. Van Kuren.
Nothing at this time, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir. Executive, Ordinance, Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. President. 3 items today, A-16-13, resolution concerning the appointment of members to the local board of tax review. A-16-14, amend ACO section 121.04, standing rules of council regarding change in meeting time. And A-16-15, amending signed ordinance 1149, sections 06, 07, 08, and .12. I can call these for March. Wow, we're already in March. How about March 7th? Somewhere around there, March 7th, and 7 o'clock would be fine.
Thank you.
That'll be all, no more items for ordinance. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Utilities, Mr. Janik.
No items, Mr. President, please cancel.
Thank you. Recycle, Mr. Miller.
And please keep putting it in the green bins. Thank you. No
Thank you.
items.
Technology, Mr. Bukovac.
No items, please cancel.
Thank you. Police and Fire, Mr. Winarski.
Nothing at this time, Mr. President.
Thank you. Annexation, Mr. Miller.
No items, please cancel.
Thank you. That completes item 10. About item 11, reports of administration.
Thank you. Mr. Kukuka?
No report this evening. Report?
Mr. Pecora?
No report, Mr. Costello.
Thank you. Mr. Jeffries?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to let you all know that we have the SCBA apparatus out for bid through local newspapers. It's also on the city website. And that bid opening will be March 18th at 10 a.m. I think this is a common practice for us. We'll let you all know as you approve things for us to get out for bids. We'll let you know that we've done it and when the bid openings are. End of report, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to report myself that I will be having my first State of the City address during the administrative reports, the next regular council meeting on March 14th. I also want to be reaching out to the Technology Advisory Committee. I really hope by the end of March we start using that committee for some advice. We've got a lot of technical upgrades, so I really hope that I'm able to work with them and I think put them to good use. I do have some financial good news. I got a letter from the Ohio EPA today. It just says the Ohio EPA and the Ohio Water Development Authority are pleased to inform you that we have completed an interest rate buy down to assist you in your grants. It goes into a bunch of language, but way back when we borrowed $10 million to upgrade our wastewater treatment plant, we borrowed $10 million at like 3.65%. The EPA and the agencies of the Ohio Water Development Authority has done a buy down to help free up some money that municipalities have. So they're giving us a 3% rate for the duration of our loan, which goes through 1/1 of year 2025. That's going to be a total cost savings to the city over those 9 years for $162,911. This year alone, it'll be just over $30,000 we'll save in interest. So good things like that don't happen very often. I just thought it was noteworthy. And just on another quick note, thanks to leap year, we have the rare 5th Monday. So enjoy your guys' next Monday off, thanks to February 29th. End of report.
Thank you. I'm glad to see the state gave us something back
Absolutely.
instead of taking it all away again. Mr. Miller.
Move to accept reports as read.
Ms. Vasil. Motion is second on the floor to accept the reports of administration as read. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Van Kuren?
Yes.
Mrs. Wasilk?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Bukovac? Mr.
Yes.
Goodell?
Yes.
Need a motion to adjourn. Mr. Goodell.
Make motion to adjourn.
Mr. Miller.
Second.
Motion is second on the floor to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We are adjourned at 8:21.
John, I like the idea, but no, they don't let yourself sit around. I went until, I like that. I hope you keep that with that.